This story is a fictionalized dramatization inspired by celebrity interview rumors and imagined tensions, opening with Anthony Hopkins arriving at a daytime studio where the atmosphere feels unusually charged. Crew members exchange quiet glances, sensing that this will not be a routine promotional chat. Hopkins appears calm, dignified, and reserved, greeting staff politely. Yet there's an intensity behind his eyes that suggests he's prepared for more than small talk as the audience settles in, unaware of the storm about to unfold. Joy Behar welcomes Hopkins warmly, praising his legendary career and unmistakable screen presence. The opening moments flow smoothly, filled with anecdotes about acting, aging, and the discipline required to remain sharp in a demanding industry. Hopkins responds thoughtfully, his voice steady and reflective. The audience laughs at gentle humor, lulled into comfort, believing they're witnessing a respectful exchange between two seasoned personalities. As the conversation deepens, Joy pivots toward questions about fame, legacy, and public scrutiny. Hopkins listens intently, choosing his words with care. He speaks about privacy and the cost of lifelong visibility. Joy nods but presses further, suggesting that public figures inevitably shape cultural conversations whether they intend to or not. The tone subtly shifts, still polite, but edged with philosophical tension. Hopkins counters by emphasizing the separation between art and commentary, stating that actors should not be obligated to serve as moral compasses. The audience murmurs in interest. Joy challenges this gently, proposing that silence can also be a statement. Hopkins' expression tightens slightly, signaling discomfort. What was once reflective now feels interrogative, as if two worldviews are slowly drifting into collision. The discussion grows more pointed when Joy references past remarks Hopkins allegedly made about media interpretation. He clarifies his stance firmly, insisting his words were taken out of context. Joy, unyielding but calm, suggests that context is often shaped by impact rather than intent. The room grows quieter, laughter replaced by attentive stillness as viewers sense the conversation crossing into more volatile territory. Hopkins leans forward, his voice still controlled but noticeably firmer. He speaks about the exhaustion of defending oneself repeatedly against misinterpretation. Joy responds that public discourse thrives on accountability. The exchange remains civil, yet tension hums beneath every sentence. The audience shifts, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent, caught between admiration and unease. A visible crack appears when Joy asks whether Hopkins feels misunderstood by modern audiences. He pauses longer than before, then answers sharply that understanding requires listening, not labeling. The edge in his tone startles the room. Joy raises an eyebrow, acknowledging his frustration while pressing on. The dynamic now resembles a debate rather than an interview. Hopkins' patience thins as he argues that interviews should illuminate work, not provoke controversy. Joy replies that honest questions aren't provocations. The words hang heavily. Hopkins exhales, the weight of decades of scrutiny evident in his posture. This is no longer about the single question, but about accumulated wariness. The audience senses the shift before it fully erupts. Hopkins' voice rises slightly as he speaks about dignity and respect. Joy maintains composure, but her responses sharpen, defending her role as an interviewer. The balance of power wavers, each refusing to retreat. Cameras capture every nuance, magnifying tension that might otherwise dissipate in private conversation. The turning point arrives when Joy asks a question that Hopkins perceives as dismissive of artistic integrity. His reaction is immediate. He straightens, his voice resonant and intense, declaring that art is not a talking point to be reduced to sound bites. Gasps ripple through the studio. The audience freezes, fully aware they're witnessing something unscripted and raw. Joy attempts to de-escalate, acknowledging his passion, but Hopkins continues, expressing years of pent-up frustration. His words are forceful yet articulate, carrying the weight of lived experience. The band remains silent, unsure whether to play. Producers watch anxiously from backstage, recognizing the interview has slipped beyond control. Hopkins' eruption isn't chaotic but deliberate, each sentence delivered with conviction. He speaks about the erosion of nuance in public discourse. Joy listens, lips pressed together, allowing him space. The audience's silence becomes profound, absorbing every word as if afraid to interrupt the gravity of the moment. When Hopkins finishes, Joy responds carefully, validating his feelings while standing by her questions. The air remains thick. Hopkins shakes his head, murmuring that this isn't constructive. His demeanor shifts from fiery to resolute, signaling an impending decision rather than continued argument. Slowly, Hopkins rises from his chair. A collective gasp fills the studio. Joy looks genuinely surprised, asking him to stay. He replies that he values dialogue, but not at the expense of respect. The line lands heavily, echoing through the quiet room as cameras scramble to reframe the shot. Hopkins thanks the audience with a brief nod, his expression stern but controlled. He turns toward the exit, each step deliberate. Joy stands partially, torn between professionalism and disbelief. The moment crystallizes into an image destined to be replayed and dissected endlessly. As Hopkins exits, Joy addresses the audience, attempting to steady the atmosphere. She calls for a break, her voice calm despite visible tension. The cameras cut, but the impact lingers. Within minutes, social media erupts, clips spreading rapidly, captions framing the incident in dramatically opposing ways. Speculation explodes online. Some praise Hopkins for defending artistic integrity, calling his walkout powerful and principled. Others criticize the move as excessive, arguing that tough questions are part of public life. Joy's supporters commend her composure, while detractors accuse her of pushing too far. Entertainment commentators framed the fictional incident as a generational clash over media roles and expectations. Think pieces multiply, each claiming to decode what really happened. The narrative grows larger than the moment itself, shaped by opinion rather than certainty. Backstage rumors suggest the conversation continued off-camera, calmer but unresolved. No official statements emerge immediately, allowing speculation to flourish unchecked. Silence becomes fuel, and the imagined confrontation dominates headlines far longer than anyone involved anticipated. In this dramatized aftermath, Joy returns to the show days later, addressing viewers obliquely. She speaks about dialogue, disagreement, and respect, choosing words with precision. Her measured tone earns praise, reinforcing her reputation for resilience under pressure. Hopkins, meanwhile, retreats from interviews temporarily, focusing on his craft. When he reappears publicly, he speaks about boundaries and the importance of thoughtful conversation. Audiences listen closely, searching for subtext, eager for clues about his perspective and the incident. The fictional walkout becomes a reference point in discussions about interview ethics. Media trainers cite it as an example of how quickly conversations can escalate. The industry quietly recalibrates, acknowledging the fragile balance between curiosity and confrontation. Fans replay the footage repeatedly, analyzing body language and phrasing. Each pause and inflection is scrutinized. The incident transforms into a mirror reflecting viewers' own beliefs about respect, accountability, and artistic freedom. Over time, the outrage softens into reflection. New controversies arise, but this moment remains bookmarked in cultural memory. It resurfaces whenever debates about celebrity interviews intensify, serving as shorthand for unresolved tensions. In creative circles, the story inspires essays and dramatizations exploring the cost of visibility. Artists relate to Hopkins' frustration, recognizing the pressure to explain oneself endlessly. The fictional confrontation resonates because it feels emotionally authentic, even if the details are imagined. Media scholars later describe the moment as emblematic of a transitional era in broadcasting. Live television's unpredictability is praised and feared, its ability to reveal genuine emotion both captivating and risky. The imagined narrative emphasizes that no one wins such moments. Careers continue, reputations adapt, but the emotional residue remains. The walkout becomes less about anger and more about accumulated fatigue. As years pass, the clip feels less explosive and more instructive. Younger audiences encounter it with curiosity rather than outrage. Distance allows for nuance, transforming spectacle into lesson. Ultimately, this fictional account frames the eruption not as loss of control, but as a boundary asserted publicly. Whether justified or not, It sparks conversation about how far interviews should go when participants are allowed to disengage. The story closes on ambiguity rather than resolution, reminding viewers that dialogue is fragile. When patience fractures, the resulting silence can speak louder than any argument, leaving audiences to reflect on how easily understanding can slip away under bright studio lights. In the fictional aftermath, entertainment news outlets continue to dissect every second of the interview, replaying Hopkins' expressions and vocal inflections. Analysts debate whether his eruption was a product of personality, principle, or simply fatigue from decades of public scrutiny. Each replay adds new interpretations, and the story evolves into a case study for how fame intersects with public expectation in high-pressure settings. Behind the scenes, producers in this dramatized scenario implement new protocols for high-profile guests. Pre-interviews are longer, questions vetted more meticulously, and contingency plans drafted for tense exchanges. The episode becomes an internal training tool, illustrating how quickly a carefully scripted segment can spiral into unpredictable territory when emotion and principle collide. Fan communities remix and meme the moment extensively, turning it into humorous parodies, exaggerated reenactments, and dramatic edits. While humor softens the intensity, it keeps the incident alive in public consciousness. The fictional eruption becomes a viral emblem of celebrity boundaries, shared across platforms with both admiration and critique. In this narrative, younger actors and public figures discuss the incident in private settings, weighing the lessons to be learned. Some admire Hopkins' courage to assert his boundaries, while others worry about alienating interviewers and audiences. The episode sparks debates about balancing authenticity with diplomacy in the spotlight. Kelly Clarkson, in Imagine Retrospectives, comments on the importance of dialogue and respect, indirectly referencing similar incidents. She highlights how interviews can challenge both guests and hosts, demonstrating the need for empathy without compromising honesty. The commentary reframes public perception of talk show dynamics, encouraging nuanced understanding. Hopkins' fictional publicists advise him on media appearances with heightened care. Interviews become structured, yet flexible, leaving room for expression while minimizing unnecessary tension. This careful orchestration reflects lessons learned from the dramatic eruption, highlighting the delicate interplay between preparation and spontaneity. Fans continue to debate the incident online, drawing parallels with other celebrity confrontations. Some argue Hopkins' reaction was justified, seeing it as an assertion of dignity. Others interpret it as an overreaction to a reasonable line of questioning. The lack of consensus fuels continued discussion, solidifying the event's cultural significance. Television critics analyze the clip as a turning point in audience expectations for talk shows. Live interviews are no longer seen as casual entertainment. They are high-stakes negotiations of personality, principle, and perception. The fictional eruption becomes a reference point for both producers and viewers when considering how televised conversations unfold. In classrooms and media studies programs, the moment is used to illustrate the challenges of communication in public settings. Students debate ethics, boundaries, and the responsibilities of hosts and guests. The eruption is dissected as a lesson in navigating pressure, emotion, and public scrutiny simultaneously. Podcasts and long-form analyses revisit the moment months later, exploring Hopkins' career, personality, and approach to interviews. Commentary emphasizes that the eruption was as much about personal integrity as it was about the single question. Audiences engage with the story intellectually, moving beyond shock toward reflection. The dramatized event also sparks dialogue about mental health and stress management in high-profile careers. Hopkins' fictional frustration is interpreted as a reminder that even revered artists face pressures invisible to the public. The eruption, while dramatic, humanizes him in the eyes of many viewers. Social media trends around the clip continue to evolve, with hashtags emerging highlighting the tension, the respect for boundaries, and the intensity of the moment. Fans and commentators alike use these digital markers to share opinions, memes, and discussion threads, keeping the narrative alive in virtual spaces. Over time, the incident is referenced in interviews with other celebrities, Either as cautionary advice or illustrative anecdote, it becomes part of industry lore, signaling to new generations of performers the importance of preparation and the potential volatility of live, unscripted conversation. In this fictional arc, Hopkins occasionally reflects privately on the eruption, considering whether a different approach might have diffused tension. The introspection is quiet, not public, highlighting that even dramatic moments involve personal reckoning and self-assessment. Finally, the story's legacy is not rooted in blame but in awareness. Audiences recognize that public confrontations are rarely simple. The eruption becomes emblematic of the challenges in balancing authenticity, vulnerability, and decorum, leaving a lasting impression on both media and viewers. A moment of tension that continues to provoke thought and conversation long after the cameras have stopped rolling. In this fictional narrative, Hopkins' Eruption sparks intense discussion about the boundaries between curiosity and provocation. Journalists debate whether Joy Behar crossed the line or whether Hopkins' reaction amplified the tension unnecessarily. The incident becomes a case study in interviews where personalities, ego, and professional pride intersect, demonstrating how quickly decorum can give way to genuine emotion on live television. Fans dissect every frame of the interview, analyzing facial expressions, hand gestures, and shifts in tone. Each viewer interprets the interaction differently, reflecting their own beliefs about respect, authority, and celebrity responsibility. The fictional scenario highlights the fragility of communication under scrutiny, showing how quickly misunderstanding can escalate into confrontation. Social media users create countless memes and discussion threads, humorously exaggerating the moment while simultaneously cementing its place in pop culture. Parody videos, reaction compilations, and fan edits proliferate, demonstrating the viral potential of emotionally charged celebrity encounters. Even in exaggeration, the moment continues to captivate audiences. In the imagined aftermath, the show's producers quietly revise their approach to celebrity interviews. They introduce pre-interview briefings, discuss possible hot-button topics, and create protocols for unexpected tension. The eruption serves as a lesson in anticipating emotional peaks and managing live television risks, reshaping industry practices for years to come. Hopkins, in this dramatized story, later reflects on the incident with colleagues and confidants. He emphasizes the importance of preserving dignity while speaking candidly, recognizing the double-edged sword of unfiltered truth in the public eye. The reflection adds nuance to the eruption, framing it as both a defense of principle and an emotional reaction. Joy Behar also internally reviews the interview, recognizing the complexity of her questions and the intensity of Hopkins' response. She considers the balance between tough journalism and sensitivity, gaining insight into the boundaries of respectful inquiry. The episode becomes a learning experience for both participants in the fictional account. In academic discussions, the incident is framed as a study in power dynamics and communication theory. Students analyze the interplay of verbal and nonverbal cues, audience response, and media framing. The eruption becomes a textbook example of how live dialogue can unravel, teaching lessons about timing, tone, and emotional intelligence. The fictional eruption inspires creative reinterpretations, including short films, podcasts, and live debates. Writers explore themes of authority, respect, and vulnerability, using the incident as a narrative springboard. The story resonates because it captures a universally relatable tension between principle and performance. Audiences begin to view interviews with greater awareness, attuned to the subtleties of tone and phrasing. The Hopkins Behar confrontation becomes a reference point for what can go wrong when expectation meets friction, influencing viewer perception of talk shows and celebrity exchanges across the industry. The dramatized event fuels broader discussions about media responsibility. Analysts debate the ethical obligations of hosts, suggesting that curiosity must be balanced with empathy. Meanwhile, viewers weigh their own expectations, questioning whether they value spectacle over substance. The incident becomes a touchstone for ethical discourse and broadcasting. As months pass, the story transitions from immediate controversy to cultural reflection. Its virality diminishes, but the lesson endures. Dialogue is delicate, and even experts can miscalculate its flow. The eruption is studied for insight, not entertainment, offering perspective and emotional regulation under pressure. Younger performers reference the incident as cautionary advice. They discuss how to handle provocative questions without compromising composure. The fictional Eruption informs professional development, illustrating that preparedness, self-awareness, and respect are key in navigating interviews. Public reactions evolve over time, from shock to admiration for Hopkins' assertiveness. Conversations shift from assigning blame to considering the broader societal pressures on public figures. The fictional narrative illustrates that tension can reveal character, and that perceived conflict can foster understanding. The story's longevity is enhanced by ambiguity. Neither Hopkins nor Behar fully reconciles on air, leaving audiences to interpret motives and intentions. This lack of resolution ensures continued discussion, allowing the incident to remain relevant as an example of complex interpersonal dynamics in public spaces. Ultimately, the fictional account underscores that live television magnifies every emotional response. Hopkins' Eruption, while intense, is framed as a natural reaction to perceived intrusion and misinterpretation. The event's resonance lies not in spectacle alone, but in its reflection of the human need for respect, understanding, and boundaries in even the most public arenas. In this fictional continuation, entertainment media dissect every nuance of Hopkins' Eruption, replaying clips to analyze his tone, pauses, and gestures. Pundits debate whether the intensity reflected principled indignation or accumulated frustration. Each segment reinforces the cultural fascination with celebrity vulnerability, showing how even a brief emotional spike can dominate public discourse for weeks. Fans create side-by-side comparisons of Hopkins' earlier interviews with this moment, noting subtle changes in demeanor and conversational style. These analyses feed forums and social media threads, fueling speculation about whether the eruption was predictable or a spontaneous emotional release. The story becomes both viral content and a study in personality under pressure. The show's producers, in this imagined scenario, introduce stricter guidelines for hosting high-profile guests. Topics are pre-cleared, contingency plans are drafted, and staff rehearsals simulate tense exchanges. The incident serves as a blueprint for understanding the risks of live interviews, highlighting the unpredictability of human emotion under a spotlight. Comedians and late-night hosts reference the moment in skits and monologues, carefully blending humor and critique. While satire softens the tension, it amplifies the cultural significance of the eruption. The dramatized scenario achieves a dual role, entertaining audiences and maintaining Hopkins' public narrative as someone unafraid to assert boundaries. Hopkins, in private reflections, acknowledges the difficulty of maintaining patience under repeated scrutiny. He notes that public dialogue often simplifies nuance, making measured responses seem aggressive. These introspections, while fictional, deepen the narrative, portraying him as thoughtful and aware despite the explosive public moment. Joy Behar, in this imagined aftermath, examines how phrasing and tone influence reactions. She reflects on the challenge of balancing curiosity with sensitivity, acknowledging the tightrope walked by interviewers. The story portrays both participants as learning from the encounter, reinforcing that such moments are as instructive as they are dramatic. Social media continues to debate the incident, with clips shared alongside commentary about respect, accountability, and communication styles. Hashtags trend repeatedly as fans weigh in on Hopkins' intensity versus Behar's journalistic persistence. The event transcends entertainment, becoming a conversation about values and public expectation. In academic settings, the eruption is used to teach communication skills, media literacy, and conflict resolution. Students analyze how live broadcasts magnify emotional reactions, exploring strategies to de-escalate tension and maintain professionalism. The fictionalized incident becomes a teaching tool for generations of media professionals. Creative artists reinterpret the moment in fictional short films, essays, and podcasts. Themes of boundary, vulnerability, and public perception are explored. The scenario resonates because it highlights universal struggles with authority, criticism, and self-expression, even within the high-stakes realm of celebrity interviews. Audiences become increasingly attuned to subtle cues in interviews, noticing shifts in body language, vocal emphasis, and micro-expressions. The Hopkins Behar scenario illustrates how tension can exist even without shouting, teaching viewers to read the emotional subtext of televised interactions. Analysts examine how the eruption reflects generational and cultural differences in communication. Hopkins represents a measured, principled approach to personal boundaries, while Behar embodies journalistic inquiry. The interplay of these perspectives makes the incident both compelling and instructive for observers of public discourse. As time passes, the intensity of the moment softens, but its significance remains. The story becomes emblematic of challenges faced by public figures navigating modern media, demonstrating that emotional authenticity, even if uncomfortable, resonates more than scripted responses. The fictional aftermath portrays Hopkins returning to interviews with greater caution and self-awareness, while still maintaining integrity. He selectively engages with media outlets, choosing conversations aligned with his principles. This strategic recalibration reflects growth and foresight following the dramatic eruption. Joy Behar also adapts, refining her interviewing style to balance curiosity and respect. While she continues to ask challenging questions, the narrative emphasizes careful phrasing, tone, and context. Both participants learn from the incident, underscoring the story's value beyond sensationalism. Ultimately, the fictional account of Hopkins' eruption serves as a reflection on human interaction under scrutiny. It reveals the complexities of public dialogue, where principle, personality, and perception intersect. The moment lingers not because of anger alone, but because it captures the raw tension inherent in navigating respect, curiosity, and authenticity in a live broadcast environment.